and welcome to another teacher talk session tonight. And tonight we are having another educator, Ben from Turkey, and he's an academic assistant director of the School of Foreign Languages at Yaşar University, and he's in charge of the EAP and ML programs in Collins. And when he comes, we are going to start the live session. Waiting for him to join. Sometimes we have this technical problem. Sorry, but it's not, it's not about us. Hi. No. Can you see me? Okay now.
Okay.
Oh,
There we
finally.
go.
So yes, I can see you and
Okay.
hear you clearly, and hope you
Okay,
do the
great.
same.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. That's what we want. Okay, wonderfully. All right. So finally we made it. Okay. And before starting our live sessions, I would like to say thank you very much for accepting my invitation to Teacher Talks and being my guest tonight for 202nd guest.
Yes,
It's a
I'm
huge
honored.
number.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
You're welcome. I'm really honored to have you here tonight. I know we are all very busy as an educator, so I don't want to take your time more. And if you're ready, can we start?
Absolutely. Let's go
Perfect,
for it.
Aim, thank you. And I know about you, but maybe our audiences would like to know about you. So can you tell us about yourself, please, and a bit about your experiences too?
Yeah, okay. So I'm from Brighton in the UK, and I studied history at university. I then went to law school and had quite a long career as a litigator in a big London law firm. It's a bit like the TV series Suits, but the people are a bit more ugly, I suppose. But I mean, I loved studying law, and I was really interested. I am really interested in it, but the job I didn't like very much. And I mean, I did it for 10 years and I was working very long hours, a lot of stress. It gave me some amazing experiences. I traveled all around the world, um, and ate in some very nice restaurants, earned good money, but I never felt very happy, I suppose, in myself. I never really felt that I was doing anything that I considered to be worthwhile, possibly because I was working in a very narrow niche kind of area of law. The clients were all big corporations, and I just couldn't feel anything for it, really. I was just doing my job, and eventually I just sort of got fed up. I'd made enough money, and I just stopped, basically. And that's when I sort of fell into teaching. It's a sort of long and complicated story, but I found myself in Turkey anyway in 2008. So I took a CELTA
Wow.
certificate, and by 2009 I was at Yaşar University in Izmir. It was a bit of a sort of whirlwind transition. I reckoned I was about 20 times poorer probably than I'd been in London,
Oh,
but at the same time, I was much, much happier. So literally the first day of my CELTA, I absolutely loved it. And I've pretty much loved it ever since. Of course, from every now and again, you sort of wonder why you're doing it for such little money. But
I see.
overall, I really love it. And yeah, so as soon as I started at Yashar, life changed completely. And here I am now,
Yeah,
effectively. I've been there
it's
16 years
great.
now.
Wow, it's a long time, you know, really
Yeah,
long
yeah.
time.
Yeah, a really long
And
time. And I started in a prep class. I was just a 20-hour teacher, but actually fairly quickly, I found myself doing a CEA accreditation project. And around 2012, I think I started working in the EAP team.
EAP.
And then
Mm-hmm.
by 2013, I was actually leading the EAP and ML teams.
Oh,
And I've
I
basically been
see.
doing that since then, yeah.
I got it. Thank you very much, Ian, for this the brief information about yourself. But someone is asking you a question of what kind of law did you practice?
I was a professional negligence litigator, and so usually defense side. So effectively, if an accountant or a management consultant had made some kind of error and their firm was sued, I would defend the firm. But I'm not
Uh-huh.
talking about getting a couple of dollars wrong on the accounts. I'm talking multi-billion pound problems. Usually, it arose from where a company had bought another company on the basis of some accounts, which then turned out to be wrong. And so they'd lost, I mean, millions and sometimes billions of dollars. And of course, at that point, they then see who they can sue. And the accountants and the merchant banks and those kinds of people were obvious
Sorry.
people to sue. And so I was acting generally for the accountants and the
Oh,
banks or their
I see.
liquidators, because often they'd gone into liquidation, they'd gone bust by then. So it was usually acting for the liquidators of those
I
entities. Yeah.
see. Got it. Thank you. Thank you for the answer for the question. And all right. So my next question is about your education. Like, what was or were your turning point and points in your own education? We all have some turning points,
Yeah.
but what about yours?
Um, Well, there's been so many. I mean, I think one, I went to university and I was reading history. I found it quite tough in my first year, and I had massive imposter syndrome. It was very academically competitive at the university,
Uh-huh.
and students, you really felt that you were competing with everyone else. And I wondered sometimes if I actually belonged there. Um, but I studied hard, and at the end of my first year, I actually did really well, and I'd won a prize and a sort of big scholarship. And suddenly it occurred to me that I did belong there, and that sort of confidence that I got from doing that really
I see.
changed. And then I felt comfortable for the rest of my time at university. Um, Another turning point. Um, Actually, I mean, doing a CELTA, literally the first day of doing it, I loved it. And I wondered, why hadn't I done this before? Actually, as a lawyer, I'd been training other lawyers at times, and I'd really enjoyed that. But
I
it took
see.
me a long while to make the connection. Why was it that I loved doing that, but not the other parts of being a lawyer? And so, yeah, it was for my CELTA and then joining Yashar, and that really changed my life when I joined Yashar.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Ian, I know that you have been teaching for a long time, and as a teacher or educator or trainer, you're doing a lot of things. And during
Yeah.
this time, probably you have tried different techniques, methodologies, strategies in your lessons, and you try to
Yeah.
teach these to other people. And probably you have a kind of a philosophy of teaching. So what is it? What is your philosophy of teaching?
Um, Well, I mean, always the normal technical things that everyone says. I mean, obviously, I'm trying to create student-centered lessons. I'm trying to act as a guide, supporting their
Uh-huh.
success. Um, but I mean, the underlying philosophy is always every lesson, I just try to help the students be different by the end of the lesson. And that might be a very, very small thing, or it might be something quite significant.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't always work. But I genuinely go into every lesson with it in my mind that I need to help the students just change something,
Change them.
learn something, do something a little bit differently, somehow, just do something that's going to help them and be successful.
I see. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we're talking about the education stuff and some things that, but that, and you've been as an educator, the teachers, we all have a lot of stories in our life. Sometimes we have bad stories, sometimes we have good ones, and some failed ones, of course, and of course some success stories. I'm sure that you have a lot of stories. So can you tell us one or maybe two success stories of yours? If you have something inspirational for us, can you tell us
Okay.
about it?
Yeah, I mean, actually, relatively recently, 2018 or 19, the law faculty at Yaşar came to me and they knew that I'd been a lawyer, and they'd converted recently to a 30% English program.
Uh-huh.
And to be honest, they didn't have many lecturers who either could or definitely didn't want to teach in English. And so they were desperate for English credits, basically. And so they kind of begged me to develop a course. And I realized that I was in a strong position at that point because they were
Ah,
so
I see.
desperate. And so I basically dictated exactly what I wanted to do. And law students in Turkey, unlike myself, when I was at law school, I was given a lot of practical training on how to be a lawyer, not just learning the law. And law students in Turkey don't generally get that. Even there's an hour bar preparation course, but again, it doesn't really help them with professional
Ah,
skills
I
like interviewing
see.
clients, writing letters, drafting contracts. And so I designed a course like that. And it's been super successful. It's definitely one of the best things I've ever done. I'm teaching fourth year students. They're highly motivated. Their English is fairly strong. They come in and this is unlike any other lesson that they've had. It's very dry, the law curriculum generally.
Mm-hmm.
And they suddenly find themselves interviewing people. They find themselves using real contracts and real documents that they would actually use if they were doing international work.
Uh-huh.
And to see them develop and blossom and just enjoy that so much has definitely been one of my major inspirations, and I would say definitely one of my successes. Apart from that, yeah, I mean, I was pretty proud coming from a Turkish ELT environment to get onto the commission of the Commission for English Language Program Accreditation, which is a US agency for accreditation. It's fairly active in Turkey, but not hugely well known. And I'd been a reviewer for them, and I got onto the commission, became the chair of the agency for 2022, and that, yeah, I was pretty proud that I'd done that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I see. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ian. And what I'm gonna say that, well, actually, I'm gonna ask you about it. The teachers, we always want to be successful in the classroom. We always do the good things in the classroom, but sometimes we do it. Sometimes we don't. We don't know what to do it. But
Yeah.
as an educator trainer, uh, what do you think actually makes a teacher successful in the classroom?
um that's a really good question. I mean, as a reviewer for an accrediting agency, I've seen a lot of lessons, and I've seen a lot of,
Yeah.
very well constructed, very student centered lessons where they're doing all the things you were taught in your ELT department, yet somehow they're not very successful. Um, and I think that almost always comes down to the energy and enthusiasm of the teacher. Of course, you need to follow, the pedagogy and, SLA ideas. But if you don't want to be in the classroom and you're not enjoying working with the students, I kind of think whatever you do won't be very successful. You certainly won't engage the students. So, and I think many people in the ELT, they sort of fell into it. They were perhaps great at English at school, didn't really know what they wanted to do. And in Turkey, it's a very rigid higher education system. Once you're on that track, it's extremely difficult to get out of it. And then they turn up at a prep class, not really wanting to be a teacher, maybe. That's not obviously everyone, but a certain proportion. And I think those people don't want to be in the classroom. And you can students can smell that. They know if you don't like them, or you don't want to
Yeah,
be in the
exactly.
classroom, and that just kills the energy. So yeah, I always think whenever I'm observing classes, either my own teachers or during site reviews and things, I always sort of listen out for that energy, that the teacher really wanting to be there. And I think even if you've got a fairly rubbish lesson plan, um, you can make up for a lot of the problems in your construction just by being enthusiastic and engaging the students. But on
Mm-hmm.
top of that, I mean, you just need to be open-minded, and particularly in today's climate, you need to be super adaptable because things are changing incredibly quickly. And what is orthodoxy today may well be completely old-fashioned in a relatively short amount of time.
I see. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ian. All right, as an educator, as a teachers, actually, we always want to, the feel more, the motivated and happy at work. We all want this, but sometimes we, we want to take this motivation and being happy at work, uh, from our leaders, from our head of departments, or
Yeah.
I don't know, principals or the directors, the place where we work. So when you think about this, how can these leaders, head of departments, or the I don't know, the principals, help teachers feel more motivated and happy at work? This is really important for all
Yeah.
of us.
Yeah. Absolutely. I wish I knew. Actually, I mean, that is, well, it has been, it's not so much now, but that has been my job for the last sort of 12, 13 years, was to
Yeah.
lead the team, help them to be motivated. And I have to confess, that if I have a sort of failing, it is that personal part that is so important. I'm great at demonstrating to them or modeling for them, working hard, preparing, that kind of stuff. The human side, maybe that is possibly my weakness, I would say.
Uh-huh.
And so, the things I will tell you now aren't necessarily the things I always do myself, but I try. I'm conscious of it, and I try. But yeah, being present and available, so that the team always know that you're there to back them up. And in an IEP context, you have students complaining, you sometimes have parents complaining. And, I never let my teachers bear the brunt of that. I always get them. If you have a problem, you just
Uh-huh.
come to me. And I think they appreciate that I'm always present and available for them. Even though I'm often traveling or I'm very busy, I really make a point of doing that. Open communication, I mean, that's it's such a truism, but it really works, and it's something that I haven't always been great at. But almost all problems are solved through effective communication,
Mm-hmm.
and things. Just people get misunderstandings so easily, and teachers are very independent people. One of the reasons they go into teaching is so that they don't have to work in a corporate atmosphere, and they're not necessarily people that like to work in teams, or it's certainly not their natural state. And so communication then becomes even more important. And as I say, it's not something I'm always great at, but I'm always conscious that I should be. Celebrating success, I think sometimes, certainly in Turkey, we have slightly a feeling that we're not as good as other countries, particularly the US, for example,
Yeah.
at doing our jobs. And I can tell you that's absolutely not true. And I've reviewed programs from all over the US, and no one's doing anything significantly better than what I've seen in Turkish IEPs. So yeah, celebrating that success and actually thinking, we do a good job, I think, is a way of keeping us
Mm-hmm.
happy, everyone happy. Having events and that kind of thing. I mean, I must admit, before the pandemic, we did a much better job of keeping everyone happy. Since the pandemic, that sort of killed parts of us, I think, all of us, and we
Yeah,
were a
you're
bit
right.
traumatized by it. Then you had the Turkish economic problems and salary issues and all of those things. So it was like a perfect storm just for a couple of years
You're
after
right.
the pandemic. I'm starting to see people looking a little bit happier now, and we're trying our best to
Yeah,
make them
thank you.
happy.
Yeah, we are. We are. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ian, for the ideas that you tell us about it. Okay, you know that in the lessons, actually, the lessons that we are having in the classrooms, we always want to make them related to the real life, but sometimes we cannot make it. It's not easy to do it or to that point.
Yeah,
And what can schools, when you think about it, the schools to do make, especially the English lessons, we are struggling with sometimes,
yeah.
lessons more useful for real lives. What can you suggest to the teachers or the
Um,
schools?
okay, well, if I've got some ideas for high school and for IEPs, the university level higher education. I'll start with higher education. I've got a rather controversial idea. I don't believe we should be teaching EMI, so English as a medium of instruction.
Oh, I see.
I think there are probably 5, maybe 10 universities in Turkey that can successfully teach an EMI curriculum. I'm not sure. I think Yaşar should really be teaching EMI, and I would just get rid of it and have, you know, separate English courses which are elective, and students who, have the ability and the motivation
Mm-hmm.
to take them, and then we would make them much more, practically focused and, useful for real life. And so, I mean, that's where I'm happy with my law course, for example. I know that the students are using those techniques, and because they contact me after they've graduated and start working. And I think we could be doing much better on that. But we have to get rid of the EMI to do that, because, if you're studying in English, you've got to go through that prep process, and it's it's just mission impossible, basically. I think we all know that, but it employs us. And so, I realize I'm a bit conflicted on this, because I'm get my living from being in an EMI environment, but I don't really agree with it 100%. And certainly for law, the 30% law programs for me are a complete disaster. We've got students learning Turkish contract law in English just so that they can fill their credits, which just seems insane to me. It's completely random which courses they take in English and which they take in Turkish. It would be better just to have 100% Turkish with these electives for, the motivated students who want to
I
do
see.
international work and so on. So that's my sort of views. I know they're slightly controversial, maybe unpopular for the higher education level. High schools, I mean, they just should focus on communication. I know, making change is incredibly difficult. Educational change is incredibly difficult. I've studied this for my master's degree. I realize all the problems. And there needs to be some deep cultural change to really make a difference. And, I think the government or successive administrations have tried, they've sunk a huge amount of money. But I've got to say, as someone who's receiving these students, I don't notice any real improvement. And if anything, it's worse than it was 10
Mm-hmm.
years ago. I don't know, Yaşar's a particular type of university, very middle tier. I don't know if you're at Metu or one of the top universities, if you're seeing any improvement,
I
but I'm
see.
not anecdotally seeing any improvement. And I think, they should focus on just communicating and pragmatic English. But that's extremely difficult. I know, the teachers they didn't learn English like that. They haven't, studied how to teach English in that way necessarily. And so to make such a huge change is going to be really
Mm-hmm.
problematic. Having said that, I mean, I know Aishan Guvan in the British Council projects, training, I can't remember, was it 60,000 Turkish English teachers or something like that? It's absolutely incredible. And I think they're doing some good work, but, the project took 5 years. I think it only finished about 2 years ago. So maybe
Wow,
we'll start to see the fruits of that. But definitely something needs to change. I haven't got the magic recipe for doing that, but
I see.
what I do see is that students who've nominally had 6 years, even 8 years of English, come to us without really any ability to communicate anything. If you give them a gap fill with the grammar point, they can fill that out completely perfectly. But what's the point of that if you can't actually communicate
Yeah,
at all? So, yeah, I would
exactly.
definitely focus on communication. But that again, that might mean we have to get rid of EMI, because, you can't come to the university with like that, and then expect to be able to study in the language. It's not how it works, I don't think. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I'll shut up about that.
No, it's okay. It's your turn. It's your turn. Take your time, not a problem. Okay, thank you very much for this incredible info about the question. All right, we as a language teachers, and we all, that try to get the best, the education for ourselves and for our students, and we try to, especially the PD part is really important for all of us, and we are trying to do, watch some webinars, join some conferences,
Yeah.
and follow some, website or something like that. But we are trying to get a lot of training or something like this. But when you think about this, what kind of training, the teachers need, especially today, that they didn't need 10 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the technology. I'm not going to say
Yes,
anything people don't know, um, but it goes deeper than that because I think the technology now, including generative AI, it's going to change the paradigm of education. Like
I
education is
see.
just not going to be the same as it was 5 years ago or even 1 year ago, and so we need to, as the teachers we're going to be inventing that to some extent. And it's kind of frightening. It's exciting and it's frightening. I mean, I don't know if you know Donald Staub at Economy University. He's just been made the head of micro credentials. He's been talking about micro credentials for 6 or 7 years, and I've always thought they were a great idea, but it didn't really gain much traction. But suddenly, Economy University have got the message. And now they're
Mm-hmm.
starting to offer these very short courses, 1 month, 6 weeks, in which you get this micro credential, this sort of qualification in a relatively narrow thing. And then you can build on them. So the breadth of things that you can study are incredible. You can go deeper, but and very narrow, or you can go broader. And that's the future of education, right? And
Uh-huh.
if we don't adapt as teachers to do that, we're going to be dinosaurs. And I think everyone still probably wants that human touch. Until robots are absolutely lifelike, they will probably still want some kind of human contact. Teachers are still going to
Mm-hmm.
be there, but how we deliver things is going to be totally different. So yeah, I mean, if we're going to be training on something, it's going to be that, I would
I
think.
see.
And not just, I mean, it goes all the way through. It's not just methodology. It's about materials, it's about modalities, and all of those things are going to have to change, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And
I got it.
we need a
Thank you.
lot of
Thank you very
support
much.
for that. There are people that have these ideas, they're going to, design this stuff, but the rest of us are going to have to catch up quick.
Quickly. I see. Thank you very much. Okay. You're working at Yaşar University, and you also work at the prep classrooms, and now you're working in a different department
Yeah.
over there. But when you think about the language program over there, what makes different Yaşar University's language program than others? I know it's
That's
a
a
very
good question.
critical
I mean, I
critical
haven't actually
question.
worked in any other Turkish IEPs, and but I'm very aware. I sort of network with colleagues a lot, and I kind of know what they do. When I first took over the leadership of the EAP program, I went and visited all the other EAP programs in the city just to see what they were doing, and no one was really doing anything different. I don't think, from a pedagogical point of view, there's anything that Yashar's
Uh-huh.
doing particularly different. Maybe a little bit better than some, probably a lot worse than others. Um, that said, I think as a result of our accreditation that we went through in 2011, we are extremely systematic and well organized.
Mm-hmm.
And
I see.
I hear from other universities, particularly sometimes the state universities, they don't have that organizational capacity that we
Mm.
have. But yeah, I don't know this firsthand. It's just from people telling me. So yeah, I don't think we're
I
doing
see.
anything particularly different in the classroom, but certainly our systems are pretty robust, actually.
Mm-hmm. I got it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ian. And you've been to Turkey for a long time,
Yeah.
okay? And probably when you think about when you talk about the people from other countries or the teachers, they always, I'm sure that they complain about their education system sometimes
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
points,
Of course.
just like
Yeah.
us. We always, they complain about a lot of things about education system.
Yeah.
As a trainer, educator, by looking at it from outside the system, okay? So if you had a chance to change the one thing about the education in Turkey, what would you change? You can take it as an
Yeah, it
as
can't be
an
just
as an
one thing, I'm afraid,
English
Volkan.
system or general system.
Yeah, it can't be one thing. I've already said it. I ban EMI to start with. But on top of that, I mean, there just needs to be a more joined up education policy, I suppose. The university exam, that system just seems utterly crazy to me. Maybe I just don't understand it, but it seems to me that students are going through high school they're graduating high school, but their university exam is completely separate. And you hear stories of people not bothering with high school for the last couple of semesters so that they can go to a Dersane to study for the university exam.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
how does that make any sense? I mean, it's just like
I
insane,
don't know,
right?
horrible idea.
And it seems, I mean, it's just seems to be like a money making thing. It's just you've got these lobbies and these powerful interests, you know, replicating this system when everyone knows that it doesn't really work, and that the idea that your whole life can be decided on, you know, 1 or 2 day exam
Uh-huh.
seems crazy to me. I mean, you know, for me at 18, I was taking, like, I think I had a month of exams. I must have written 20 different papers in lots of different subjects, and that dictated where I went to at university. It wasn't just a multiple choice exam for 3 hours and then a second one on the next day. So I, you know, that seems to me to need to be changed. But maybe the other thing from a higher education perspective, it's just so inflexible in Turkey. You know, you get onto that track, you know, you start your law degree, you start your international relations degree, and then that's it. You know, the curriculum's super narrow. You really can only take papers that are, you know, very directly related to that topic. You can't sort of, like you can in many other countries, take courses from other faculties or departments. So, you know, it's almost impossible. If you realize, for example, you've made a mistake, it seems like you have to stop university, retake the university exam and start all over again. And it's really not like that in many other developed countries. And I think Turkish education would be a hell of a lot better if you could actually think, actually, I made a mistake, or, you know, I found out since I've been at university that I'm good at this other thing and it's not quite what I started doing and I want to transition into another area. And
Mm-hmm.
I just think you should be able to do that. And as far as I know, I mean, I think Sabancı have a system that's sort of like that, but I think very few other
And same.
universities can do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I see. Thank you very much for your ideas about it. And I want to ask you about something that you have done. I think you have written. I'm sure that you have a book that you published, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
The name of it, the English Language Common Law Workbook, something like that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
can you a little bit tell us about the book? So what's the benefit of it? Why did you write it? What's the purpose? And how can the students or the people who are interested in it get the book
Right. Okay.
from you?
Well, you can get the book from Amazon. It's $25.
Oh, nice.
If you pre-order, it's coming out in September. If you pre-order, I think you get a 40% discount. So really now is the time to buy. But where did the idea for the book come from? It's a good question. I actually wrote it with a colleague of mine who's also a qualified attorney, but a US attorney. And he did criminal law. I did this, you know, negligence litigation and contract work. So we sort of complement each other. But it came about really because for our first years, we developed a lot of materials, and there are no legal English course books available.
Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, there are, but they're just totally inappropriate for most, you know, most of the things that we're doing. You know, out of 150 pages, we maybe used 2 or 3 pages. So effectively, we just wrote all our own materials. And then I started, so our students, you know, B1 plus, you know, a few are B2, and they struggle with some of these materials for legal English. And then actually I started working for the University of Houston Law Center, and I was teaching their LLM students, or it was a pre-sessional
Oh,
course for the students going into the LLM. LLM, sorry, is a law masters, if you didn't know. And what was interesting is these are like amazing students. They're C1 users of English. They're usually immigrants into Texas, a lot from South America.
oh,
Their
I
English is
see.
almost perfect. Sometimes it's hard to discern whether they're native speakers or not. They're often lawyers. I've even taught professors of law in their own jurisdiction. But what I noticed, and I was using the same exercises sometimes, and I was thinking, you know, this will just be like a warm up, because it's too easy for them because their English is so great. And what was interesting was that they were having exactly the same problems on these exercises as my Yaşar students were having.
No, I
And I was
see.
talking to my colleague David about this, and we were sort of wondering, why are they struggling so much reading these cases? Why are they not writing, you know, these analytical paragraphs that we're expecting from them? And it sort of occurred to us that actually it's got nothing to do with the English. It definitely doesn't. I mean, you know, as I said, you know, many of these are C1 users in the Houston courses, and they're having exactly the same problems as the Yaşar students. And we worked out it was just they can't think like a common law lawyer. Now, common law is the system of started in the UK, and it's in all the sort of the old empire countries, so America, Canada, Australia,
I
South
see.
Africa. It's a very different way of doing law, whereas Turkey has a Roman law basis, and that's kind of based around the Roman law, and Germany, France, Italy, most of the European countries follow this jurisdiction, including South America. And it's just a very different way of thinking about law,
I see.
and how they study law because of that is very, very different. And they don't have the same way of analyzing things that we do. So we thought, okay, that's good. And then we thought, well, there were 10,000 LLM students, foreign LLM students in the US. They're all probably having these same problems. Why don't we see if we can publish these materials as a kind of support workbook? It's not a main course book. It's just to support their
Support.
development.
Huh?
Reading statutes, reading cases, writing legal essays. So we wrote a few chapters, sent it to the University of Michigan Press, which is, they've got one or two legal English titles, which we actually liked a lot. They were just a bit too difficult for our law students, so we didn't use them, but we loved the text. So we thought they're a good publishing house. And they loved the idea. So, we finished off our draft, and it's been about 2 years, I think it took to write, because we're just doing this in our spare time, obviously. But yeah, now it's ready. I'm waiting for our copies to be sent to us, free copies, and it's on Amazon if you search it, and yeah, it'll be out. You'll be able to get your copy. It's an ebook as well. You can get it in August.
Congratulations
Yeah,
about it,
yeah.
and
I mean,
good luck.
it's not a bedtime reading thing or anything like that, and it's very specialized. You need to be a law student or a lawyer. I mean, let's say a Turkish practitioner who wanted to do some foreign or international business, it would be useful for them. But your average ELT person, it's not going to be much interest. The cover's
I
nice,
see.
though.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you very much about the information about the
No
book. Okay, then.
problem.
So that we are in a technological area. Like I mean, like the actually we are in AI era. Let's say it's everywhere, and it's not possible to get rid of it or stay away from that kind of technological improvements. And
Yeah.
sometimes we face difficulties to follow these technological improvements because it's really fast. And but when you think about yourself, how do you follow these technological improvements in education world? What do you do, and what can you suggest to us to do it to
Okay.
follow and catch it up?
Yeah, this is a difficult question. I mean, I have to be honest. I've just given up trying to keep up with the pace of change. You read something, and the next week there's another thing that's come out and rendered obsolete the thing that you've just been reading about. So I've kind of taken, it's a bit like, I often don't answer my emails thinking that if they're that important, they'll email me again. And I'm taking the same approach to technology. If it's that useful, I will hear about it. I'm hoping. But to just make sure that works, I am going to as much training as I can. So, for example, Economy University had a session with Koray Tunç. I don't know if you know Koray. He did a 2-day kind of AI training, and that was
Yes,
really enlightening, and gave me some really amazing ideas that I've actually been using. And that's, you can't say higher than that for training. But yeah, I've got to keep doing that, because obviously the things that we were discussing during those 2 days and the things that I'm using are useful now. Maybe there'll be even better things going forward. But yeah, I'm super excited by the technology. I'm not totally scared. I'm nervous about it, just because it seems it is going to have quite a big effect on teaching English. I mean, at the end of the day, AI can write better essays than our students can.
uh-huh.
And the students know that, we know that. And so all the writing curriculum, the curricula, we're having to design them. But we're having to redesign those curricula because they're not
I
really
see.
working right now, I don't
Uh-huh.
think. But at the same time, I'm using AI to write me cases that I can use in my legal English classes, and that saves me from having to go through case reports, which it's just horrible, because they're really complicated. They're usually very, very long, and I'm having to edit them down and those kinds of things. Now I can just get AI to do it, and it's doing it in seconds. It's absolutely perfect.
That's
Um,
perfect.
yeah, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to be long before, the teacher's going to be, speaking whatever language they want in front of the class, and students will have earphones hearing it in their native language, and suddenly they're going to be asking us, why are we paying for prep year again? Why are we paying 500,000 lira to study English when we don't actually need to? Why are we learning how to write when AI can do it better than us already? So yeah, that's the scary part.
Yeah,
But yeah, I
we
mean,
can
you
say
just
that.
you just got to keep going to the trainings. I think. I mean, it's the literature. The literature you can't keep up. I don't think. I mean, it's literally by the week. So there's no point reading articles about this. They'll be out
You're
of
right.
date by the time they've come out.
Mm-hmm. My God. Thank you very much, Ian. And Azra is asking a question. Maybe you see the
My
question,
favorite
like your
AI
favorite
website.
website.
Oh, for learners, that's a good question. I have to confess, I haven't really been focusing on that. I've been focusing much more on how I can use AI. So, and
Yeah,
as I said to you, I'm teaching a very specialist, very very specialist type of English. It's a genuine English for specific purposes course. So there are no AI websites right now for learners of legal English, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm probably not the person, I'm afraid, to recommend AI websites for learners. But I'm sure there's other people in this room that probably know a lot more than me. Perhaps they can write in the box there what they think.
yeah, they can. As you said, yeah, they can write. If you have any ideas, you can write here. But the most favorite one, we know that the ChatGPT.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, for teachers, there are some great, Magic School and all of those.
yeah, that's
I've been using
also
those.
wonderful.
I mean, there's so many that I've been using.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Okay, thank you very much, Ian. So you know that actually I was going to ask you what are you doing for your job right now, but we have already talked about your
Yeah,
book. So that was the thing that you're doing it. So I'm gonna ask you that that in our life we all have role models and we
yeah,
divert their life according to our models, and or we have a people who inspire us in our life. So when you think about your life and your uh, journey in your
yeah.
life, actually, let's say, do you have any role models or any people inspired you? If you would like to tell us about it, we would like
Yeah,
to
yeah.
listen.
I mean, so many. I mean, in my teaching career, I mean, the first person I met at Yaşar was Engin Ayvaz, who was the director. He's now working actually for the CEA, the Commission on English Language Program Accreditation. He went off to the US to manage the Tennessee State University program for a bit. Now
I
he's at
see.
CEA.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, he was a guy, I'm a kind of cautious person. I find it easier to identify why something can't work. I'm good for that. If you want me to critique something, I'm great at that. But yeah, I'm a bit more pessimistic about things that can be successful. And he'd come up with this CEA accreditation idea, and we were the first university prep class in Turkey to do CEA. And he didn't know really what it was. I didn't know really what it was. But his attitude was, well, let's try and see if we can do it. And I learned a lot from that because I kind of thought, yeah, maybe we can't do this. I'm not exactly sure that we can. But I was infected by his enthusiasm, and
Nice,
and I saw that was how he does things. He's not necessarily always the completer, but he's the guy, the ideas guy, and he motivates the people around him to get the job done. And that was really eye opening because up until that, up to that point, I probably wouldn't have done that myself, and I've taken that on, and I try to be like that much more. I mean, at the moment, I mean, there's so many, Didem Mutluoğlu and İlkay Bulbul. They're doing the DEDAC accreditation agency. They're doing it for no
exactly.
money. They're doing it out of a love for doing a good job for ELT and feeling that quality in language education is really
I
important.
see.
I can't tell you how
Exactly.
much work they do. Like Didam's retired now, so she's got a bit more time. Ilkay's full-time teacher at Sabancı University, and in her spare time is organising DEDAC, which is really amazing. And
Amazing.
I'm doing a lot. I'm doing a lot of work with DEDAC, and it's very
Great.
inspirational to work with those. and the younger people, sort of Özlem Baykan at Özyeğin, she's now on the CA Commission. She's an equals inspector. She's doing incredible things. So people like that. Mehtap Çiçen is doing the QAS conference and all her quality stuff. So this younger generation coming up is really inspiring for me too. Yeah.
I see. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ian. And the time flies, and sometimes we don't know what's gonna happen in the future. We just guess. And when you think about yourself, how do you see yourself in 10 or 15 years? Will you still be in education life, or will you try
Yeah, I
another
mean, I
job
think
or
so.
jobs?
Only because I can't afford to retire, probably. So I'm going to be working for probably until I die. But that's okay because I really like what I'm doing. I mean, hopefully I won't be going to an office every day. But I hope, I mean, the CEA work that I do, the accreditation work that I do is absolutely fantastic. And I can see myself doing that, late into my life. The rest of the stuff, I don't know. I mean, that's one of the things that this new revolution in education is bringing. At the moment, I'm teaching for the University of Houston from Turkey, and I'm dealing with these incredible students, for example.
Uh-huh.
Many of them, Afghan immigrants who've escaped from the Taliban, making a new life for themselves. They've been, female judges from Afghanistan who've had to flee to America because they were going to be killed by the Taliban for being a judge and a woman.
Exactly.
And I'm
So
teaching
sorry.
them from the comfort of my home, and that's the power of technology, right? So I
Exactly.
can hopefully continue to do that kind of thing. But I suppose mostly I want to be on my bicycle, if I'm honest, earning a little bit of extra money doing report writing maybe in 15 years' time.
Great, great, great. Okay, so you know that there are sometimes that we face which are difficult, and sometimes we cannot handle or we cannot solve that problems. And when we face these kind of difficulties, that we say on our own, "Oh, I wish I could that kind of a superpower and to use it and to solve the problem or to fix the problem or to do things whatever you want." But when you think about this into the classroom,
Yeah.
if you could have one superpower to use it in the
Right.
classroom, what would it be and how would it help you?
Yeah, that's a nice question. I would, one of the problems I think we have is that it's impossible to convince our students that what we're doing is going to be useful to them.
Ah,
Um, so,
exactly.
so for example, our EAP students, just because of the way the curriculum works, they take our EAP courses in the first year, their freshman year, and we're teaching them how to write term papers, do research, read academic articles. But actually, they don't do that in their own degree courses until the third or fourth year. And so, as they're studying in their departments at the time they're learning academic English, they feel it's pointless. They just say, "Why are we learning this? Because we're not doing this in our degree program." And I think that sort of translates through the whole of their degree, and prep class too. They just can't see the point of what we're doing a lot of the time. So my superpower will be to sort of give them the foresight to realize what it is that's
Hmm.
useful about what we do. And hopefully they won't be 30 years old paying to go to a language school, because
Yes,
they regret not having learned English, and they regret having restricted their career development, for example, and then try to make up for it later. If they could just see, but also, and it's not just an economic thing, the cultural benefits you get, and the way,
exactly.
the socioeconomic benefits, cultural benefits, all of those things, open their minds to that and just like widen their worldview a little bit. And I think language teaching is one of the ways in which that can be done quite effectively. But it's hard to get that through to the students sometimes. And I understand that they're pretty busy. There's lots of pressures on them. They're kind of hopeless about Turkey at the moment, and they just want to move abroad. And they just it's fine. I find them. They just find it difficult. They just don't want to think about these things, and I kind of get that because we all have that feeling sometimes. That I don't want to think about the future, or I don't want to think about things too much because it's too
Okay,
depressing. But if they could see the benefits, hopefully they would then be a bit more motivated in the class.
I see. Thank you. Thank you very much for the superpowering. Thank you. Okay. So, and think that we finish the
Yeah,
interview and that you step outside your home and that you find a lottery ticket that's end up winning $100 million, which is a huge amount of money.
yeah.
What would you do? Please be honest, okay?
Okay, yeah, I'm going to be totally honest.
Tell what you want to do in real.
Okay, the first thing I do is register for a PhD. Um, I'm a bit too busy now, but it's kind of always been my life's ambition to do and complete my PhD. I don't really know why. I don't. It's not going to change my career in any way. But I feel it's just an itch that I want to scratch. So definitely, I would register for a PhD. I would still work. I don't think I would, work full time necessarily. But I would want to do something, and something like DEDAC, which I really believe is important. I would, give more time to that, and I would do it for free, I
Exactly.
suppose, if I had $100 million. And I would also build a velodrome and a mountain bike course in my home city, and I would take, the youth of Izmir, for example, and train them how to ride bicycles in a very safe area. Because I'm a passionate cyclist, but riding in Turkey, I can understand why families don't want their kids to ride a bike because it's pretty dangerous on the Turkish
Dangerous.
roads. And so,
Exactly.
so yeah, if
Yeah.
I could build a velodrome and an MTB course in a totally safe environment, I would do that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You're right. I'm happy that these kind of things and that you spend the money on it. All right then. Okay. That we talk about the time flies, and now I'm gonna ask you my last
Yeah.
question, which is the most difficult one. Okay then. And ready for it?
Yeah. Go on then. Is this the
Okay then.
motto question?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Let me ask you a question then. What is your motto?
Um. My motto. Okay, well, I got a work one, and this is yeah. I mentioned about meeting Engin and having my sort of worldview changed a little bit, and now I like my motto to be kind of let's try and see how it goes. Now I wouldn't have been like that 15, 20 years ago, but now I'm much more open to trying things and seeing how they go. So yeah, I try to live my life a bit more like that. Let's try and see how it goes.
Okay.
The other thing is, I like my food, particularly sweets and cakes. So my other motto would be, do you mind if I eat the last one?
That's nice. Of course, the last one is always delicious,
Yeah,
for
exactly.
everybody. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for these 2 night mottos in. And now I ask all my questions, okay? And before ending our live session, actually I don't want to finish it, but the time is running and we all have a lot of things to do.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
before ending our live sessions, would you like to say anything else or add or any suggestions or advice to the audiences?
And I don't really have any advice for people. Just try and enjoy what you do. Students see your passion and they feed off your passion. So, and if you don't like teaching, go and do something else really, because you'll be happier it's just the way to go. But also thank you, because your site, and you put an incredible amount of time into these kinds of things. I really appreciate being invited,
Thank you.
and I really admire the amount of work you put into these kinds of things. So congratulations to that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and I'm really happy that. And before the ending it, I just want to say one more time, thank you very much for your advice, for your suggestions, and especially for your precious time. You spend it with us here.
It's my
You
pleasure.
give your time. That's really
Yeah,
important. That's really
that's
important. Thank you.
really, really
Thank
my
you very
pleasure.
much.
Thank you.
And I'm Collins was with us here tonight with Teacher Talks 202nd, and we had a fruitful session with him. As you know that we are going to be here next week with another educator, and as you know that at the same time on the same day every Monday at 9 p.m. we are going to be here. And until next time, wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and until next time again, take care of yourselves and take care of yourself again. And bye bye everybody and peace.
Thanks very much. Peace. Yeah. See
Bye.
ya. Bye
See
bye.
ya.